Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with a brand new movie review, and today, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the 9th film in the Fast and Furious franchise, which, by the way, on the day I'm recording this, today is the 20th anniversary since the first one came out, which is just crazy to say, but today we are talking about F9, which I got a chance to check out last night, and I am really excited to be talking about this film. We're talking positives, we're also talking negatives, and everything in between here in this spoiler-free review of F9, but before we break it all down, make sure you're following me on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert for when I drop new content. If you all enjoyed this review, make sure to give the video a thumbs up. Share the video, helps out the channel a lot, but also appreciate the support. And in those comments, let's talk everything Fast and Furious 9. Number one, were you excited for this film? Were you looking forward to it? Was it your most anticipated film this year? But also, once you've seen this movie, we got to talk about it. We got to talk your pros, your cons, what you think of the characters, old and new, what you think of the action, the direction, the sci-fi elements, and everything this film had to throw at us. Let's talk about it in the comments. And also, they've already announced we're getting 2 more of the main Saga Fast films in the next few years. Where do you want to see this franchise go? But also, since we're talking about the 9th film, let's talk rankings. If you've seen all 9 films, or hell, throw in Hobbs and Shaw. If you've seen all 10 of these films, where does F9 land on your list? Is it number 1? Is it number 10? Is it somewhere in the middle? Let's discuss the rankings. I'm going to give you guys my list at the end of this video, so stick around for that, but share yours in the comments below. So, Fast and Furious franchise, again, celebrating its 20th anniversary on the day I'm recording this. It's crazy to say that this franchise has been around for 20 years, but listen, I enjoy the films for what they are, for better or for worse. It's one of those franchises that know exactly who's its target audience is. And hey, I wouldn't consider myself a diehard fan, but I got my collection here, you know, my steel books of F5, 6, and 7. And again, I'll share my list of rankings at the end of this video, but you know, F5 is something special. But, you know, I'm not a diehard. I've never seen a Fast and Furious film in theaters until the other night. Now, I did see Hobbs and Shaw, but as far as the main saga, this was my first time seeing a Fast and Furious film in theaters. Starting off with my positives, what I think about this film. So first and foremost, I have a suggestion for you all. For those that are excited to see this, those that are maybe on the fence about it, here's a little tip. Do yourself a favor. And just like the cars have an ignition and it has a key that turns the car on and off, do that with your brain. Turn your brain all the way off. Leave it in the lobby. Once you get your popcorn, once you get your drinks and snacks, leave the brain in the lobby and just go into this film and enjoy the ridiculousness, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, I'm going to kind of talk about this film in 2 different matters. One being, like I said, somewhat of a fan of the franchise that owns the movies, has seen them all, but also talk about the film as someone that's seen a lot of movies. So starting off with my fandom side of Fast and Furious, again, turn that brain off, don't forget. Listen, this film is ridiculous. This film knows exactly what it is. When it's at its best, it's kind of an amalgamation of all the different stuff that we've come to love in this franchise, guys. This pays homage to 1, 2, 3, 4, especially for my 3 fans. I'm not a Tokyo Drift fan, but if you love Tokyo Drift, you're going to love this film because there's a lot of Tokyo Drift characters and Easter eggs and big moments in this film for Tokyo Drift fans, which is just so crazy as I go on a side tangent here. Just knowing how important that film is to the franchise is ridiculous to me, but nonetheless, it has Tokyo Drift moments. It has some Fast 5 type of action sequences. So I think if you are a diehard fan of this franchise, I think you're going to be able to really enjoy what the film has to offer. If you're someone that loves these characters, that come to see these films for the spectacle, turning that brain off for the story, you're going to have a good time with this film. But then just kind of talking about it as far as just for someone that's seen a lot of movies, it's a competent action movie. Justin Lin, he's back in the directing chair. He hasn't been back since F6. You know, he directed 3, 4, 5, and 6. He took a little bit of a break. Now he's back. He's going to direct the next 3. And he really has a grip on this franchise. And again, we've had 3 other directors in this franchise, but I think this is his baby. And when it comes to the action in this film, it's what I come to expect with this franchise. It's just like, once F5 hit, we got to the more ridiculous parts of this franchise. But it's the cars doing things you didn't think cars can do. It's the mere skeptical, the scope of the nature of the film. And I think Justin Lin really has a grip on handling the action of the film and knowing who these characters are. And again, sticking with the theme, family is very important in this film. So I think Justin Lin does a really good job. It's good to kind of see him back in the directing chair. I have some criticisms that I'll talk about with the direction a little bit later, but for the most part, I enjoyed his directing. we got to talk characters, not necessarily performance-wise, because look, I don't go to see these movies for Oscar-winning performances, but I love Dom and the crew and the family and the jokes and the banter and the ridiculousness. So the characters are who we've come to love in these past 20 years. Dominic Toretto is, Superman in these movies. He is doing things that we've seen him do before, but even things that I don't even think he's capable of doing, as we've seen in the trailer. Driving off a cliff and just knowing the perfect angle to ride around to the other side. I mean, there's some Dom Toretto stuff that I'm just like, okay, Dom, you're Superman. So Dom's, he's doing his thing. We learn more about him in his past. There are a lot of flashbacks in this movie, which surprised me for the good and for the bad. But in regards to learning more about him, why family is so important, why he loves cars so much, you get all that backstory, which is interesting. And as far as like other supporting characters, I get a good laugh with Tyrese and Ludacris. More and more things to do in the franchise. They have a lot to do in this film. They go somewhere that I didn't expect them to go in this movie, so I have fun with them. The Mias of the world, the Lettys of the world, the Ramseys, and all the characters, they know who their characters are. They're having fun. They're kicking ass. All the characters are fine. But I will say, as far as standouts for me, I love Helen Mirren. I think she's she's having fun with these franchises. She's very small. I don't want to say cameo, but she has a very small role in this film, but I enjoyed her appearance. I'm a big Michael Rooker fan. He's literally in maybe 2 scenes, but I love seeing him in anything, so I liked his character and what he had to offer to it, and I think there might be more for him to do in this franchise, potentially. But I will say, probably my favorite character in the entire film is my man Han. I won't give it away how he comes back. Again, turn that brain off. It doesn't make sense. But Han, man, he is one of my favorite characters in the franchise, and he is awesome in this film. I'll just kind of leave it at that. And what he brings to the table and brings to the franchise, particular new character. I'm excited to see what they do with that character, but I really enjoyed Han. And again, for someone that's not a Tokyo Drift fan, I had fun with the Tokyo Driftness in this movie, and some of the characters that they bring back was a lot of fun. So the characters are there. I will mention Charlize Theron, who I'm a fan of, as Cypher. I did not like her in Fate of the Furious, but for some reason, she was working for me in this movie, and she's, number one, she's a fantastic actress, one of my favorite in Hollywood, but she's really interesting in this film, and there's a particular bit of dialogue she has that I thought was like, wow, Star Wars makes a reference in this franchise, and there's an interesting lot of dialogue that she has there, but I thought that she was great. So the characters are there, the action's there, the jokes are there, the ridiculousness is there, but let's talk about some criticisms. Listen. I said cut the brain off, but I'm not going to lie. Even with the brain turned off, this film still hurt my head at times, guys. Listen, the opening sequence, if you're not on board with this film and the opening sequence, you might as well just walk out. Because number one, this film is almost 2.5 hours, which is ridiculous to say in the first place. But nonetheless, the script, guys. Again, I don't go into these movies looking for Oscar-winning scripts or performances, but I want a film that at least can make a little bit of sense. And, Chris Morgan, who's been the writer of these films, I want to say since Fast and Furious, 2 Fast and Furious, and he did all the way up to 8. He's not the writer of this film, and I felt his absence on the script because, again, these aren't the most thought-out, thought-provoking stories, but it's just like, come on, how many devices, how many MacGuffins could do the same thing from F6, 7, and 8? It's just like we get the same storyline, and the thing that kind of threw me off with this particular script, again, the dialogue isn't perfect in these movies, but the dialogue in this movie just very generic and very kind of lifeless at times. Again, these are characters that I recognize, but it's just like, why are they saying these type of things, and why are they doing these type of things that just don't feel normal to the flow of the film? And again, this goes back to, I talked about Justin Lin being a capable director, really handling his action well, but there's something missing with this film, and I think, rest in peace to the great Paul Walker, I feel his absence. I mentioned Chris Morgan not being a part of this project. Obviously, Paul Walker wasn't part of Fast 8. There's something missing there. Dominic Toretto has chemistry with his whole family, but it's just like we have that missing element of Dom and Brian that just is like a gaping hole that's just missing in this film. It's just like Dom has this coming of Jesus moment. He wants to get back in the game. He has his kid now, Brian, and obviously him and Letty are kind of off and doing their thing, but they miss the adrenaline. They miss the rush of what their past life used to be. And I get all that stuff there, but the bromance that he had with Brian is something that I feel is sorely missed in this film. And speaking of sorely missed, I got to talk about the villain. I hate to say this because I actually like John Cena. I think he's a very, I always said that actors, wrestlers turned actors, they've always been actors, right? They have, whether you believe in wrestling, if it's real or fake, they give a performance. And I think that John Cena is a really interesting actor. He's been acting for a while, by the way, but I have to say it. I think John Cena is the worst element of this film as Jacob Toretto, this long lost brother that we've never heard of until this point, which is something you gotta just take it for what it is in this franchise. But I don't know, man. My man John Cena, the way he looked, the way he had no chemistry to me with nobody in the film. His whole backstory, I actually preferred his, I don't want to give too much away, but there are flashbacks that involve Jacob and Dom, and I actually preferred the younger actor as, Jacob. And if I'm being frank, I actually think that the guy that played Dom in those flashbacks gave a little bit more as far as his story for Dom. So I don't know, man. I hate to say it, but for me, Jacob Toretto, John Cena, easily the worst part of this film. And speaking of just other little criticisms that I had with the movie, again, brain turned off. Just the fact, I don't want to give too much away, but they use my man Tyrese as like the normal person in the situation. We always know that Roman's the guy that always realized this is some ridiculous stuff that we're doing, but there were so many times in this movie that his character would point out how ridiculous the things are that just it's funny at points. But at some points in the film, it became very annoying. Like, okay, you can say that as much as you want. Like, oh, this is ridiculous. We should be dead. Which, by the way, mild spoiler, it happens very early on in the film. But let's just say there's a point in this movie where literally a character, multiple points in this film, that a character should have died. But in particular, at the beginning of this movie, I'm just like, okay, brains off, but that makes no sense. So I'll just say, just the fact that you have a character saying that this is ridiculous doesn't mean that it makes it any better as far as the script and logical things going on in the film. So that's just like a little pet peeve of mine. It's just like, you can say that all you want, but it doesn't make it any better, just the fact that you're acknowledging that this is ridiculous. So again, speaking of ridiculous, there's some sci-fi elements in this movie that I don't want to give too much away, but I just couldn't buy into it. It was just too... It made no sense. It made no sense, and I think you guys know what I'm talking about. When you see the film, when it comes to the sci-fi, rocket scientists, and how things come to be, just, again, brain was off. Again, I can't suggest it enough. Turn that brain all the way to zero and watch this film. But even at that point, it's just like, this is ridiculous, guys. So listen, I talk my pros, I talk in cons. Do I recommend you all see this film? What would I give this film as far as score, and where does it rank? We're going to talk about that here in a second. But before I give you guys all that information, make sure you're liking the video, sharing the video, subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and make sure you hit that bell. That way you don't miss any of my content. With all that being said, overall, F9, is it the best of the franchise? No. Is it the worst? No. It's somewhere in the middle for me, guys. It has fun. The characters know who they are at this point. It's ridiculous. It's loud. It's fast. It's furious. And the third act has a lot of really good spectacle action to it. Unfortunately, though, the script is very lacking. It's one of the worst scripts in the franchise, in my personal opinion, just from a dialogue standpoint, and also just from the MacGuffin of it all. And just, we've seen this story before in regards to what they're actually trying to accomplish in this film. John Cena was just so bad to me. I still think he's a good, capable actor. We're going to see him, a lot in DC in the coming years with Peacemaker and his own TV show, but he was just the worst part of the film to me. And I can't stress enough, and there's nothing they can do about it, but I do think the absence of Brian being in the story, again, rest in peace to Paul Walker, but I felt that absence in this film in particular, as well as Chris Morgan not being a part of the script. So with all that being said, do I recommend you all see it? If you are a diehard fan, regardless of what I give this movie, you're going to see this film regardless. But if you're someone on the fence, this is an action movie. It's summertime. We're getting back in theaters. I think it's worth seeing in theaters. But with all that still being said, I'm going to give this film a 2.8 out of 5 for me. It's just, it's right in as far as rankings, as I talked about earlier. F5 is the best in the franchise. I got to go F5. I'm going F6, F7, and then I'll go this one. I'll give this one as far as my fourth film in the franchise, and then the rest of them to me, you can put, I'll say Fast and Furious 1, and then, the 6, 7, 8, and Hobbs and Shaw is pretty up there for me. So again, just to kind of recap, I'll give you my top 5. Fast 5, Fast 6, 7, I'll go with this one as far as F9, and then I'll go with the original Fast and Furious as my top 5 in the film. And I'll probably have to revisit that ranking in a little bit, but those are my top 5 films in the franchise. And then I would say Hobbs and Shaw is somewhere up there for me, and then the rest of them, again, to Fast and Furious, the Fast and Furious are the bottom of the barrel. So that's my rankings, that's my score, that's my review on F9. But let's talk about it in the comments. Your pros, your cons, your rankings. Where do you want to see the franchise head? There's been mentions of dinosaurs. I say get Transformers involved, G.I. Joes, just give us everything that you can, because we're getting more of this franchise, and I am excited to see where it goes next. But that's my thoughts of the film. As always, guys, make sure to like the video, share the video, comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Hope you're staying safe. We'll see you on the next video.